So we'll be completing a painting using a palette knife. This is one that I've done before, so I'll show you my process. I've gone ahead and sketched out my model, and I've laid out my 6 paints. I also have water off to the side. I'm using water-soluble oil, and I have my photo reference next to me. I like to work from a digital format. First, I'll start off with a yellow ochre. Then I'll take some alizarin crimson and some white, and we'll mix these. Then I'll take some of this paint and bring it over. And what I'll do is add a little bit more yellow ochre and white to that mixture. I'm going to take a little bit of this one, bring it over, and add white. So you're taking one color to mix the others. Take some more white, bring it over here, take a little bit of this, and a little bit of ultramarine blue. So we're trying to make unified colors that work well with his flesh tone. And the blue will just help with the filling of a cool color, neutralizing the saturation. Helps the figure look a little bit more alive as well. Because in your skin, you're gonna see, greens and purples and all that. So you wanna make sure you're including that in your painting, even if you're working from a photo reference. Take some purple and alizarin crimson, and I'm wiping, not necessarily wiping my palette knife with a tissue, but I'm trying to get the paint off when I use a certain color, but I don't mind it mixing. Now this color that I've made here is really dark, and so the best way to kind of tell what color you're mixing is to add a little bit of white. Remember, you can always add, but you can't take it out. It's like baking a cake, so you can always add sugar, but you can't take the sugar out. So I'm just gonna keep adding. And now I have a really rich, saturated purple. Now when I'm looking at him, I don't see exactly where I could use this strong purple. I want a purple, but nothing this saturated, not this rich in color. And so I'm gonna neutralize it. So I'm gonna dull it down a little bit. And the complement of purple is yellow, so we'll go ahead and take a yellow ochre. And again, I'll start off with a little bit, and then I can always add. I'm gonna continue to neutralize that and then lighten it up just a little bit. The problem with adding the complement is if you add too much of the complement, you completely change the color. So we're not necessarily trying to completely change the purple, but we're trying to tone it down, get a little bit more of a mauve kind of color here. And then if you want to make this into like a grayish kind of tone, a cool, then add a little bit more white to that. And you can save, previous colors because they can be beneficial later. Okay, so now I'm going to get his hair color. And I do have some tissue with me. And I'll just wipe this because I'm going into my darks and I don't want the white to overpower that. So I've got some Payne's Gray over here. I'll take a little bit of the Payne's Gray and the alizarin crimson. And alizarin crimson goes a long way, so you don't need a lot. And then I'll also take the yellow ochre. And that's going to give me a brown. Remember I said the alizarin crimson goes a long way, and so you should only put a little bit of it. I put a lot. This color I can use in other areas of his body. So in the armpit I could use it. Areas of his hair I could also use it. But I think in general it's a little too red for me. So I'm going to take the majority of it and again neutralize it. So if you want to neutralize a red, you add a green. We don't have a green, so we're going to mix a little bit of ultramarine blue. And the Payne's Gray has blue in it also, so you could always use that. And then yellow ochre, and then we'll mix these together. And now it's getting more of that brown quality. Always get out that marbleization. So you want to get out anything that makes it look marbleized. So you're actually mixing the paint thoroughly. Now, if you want to test it, take a little bit of this one and a little bit of white to kind of see what you're working with. I think I could use a little bit more yellow ochre in here. There we go. So now I've got that brown that I was looking for. You want to create all these color swatches to pull from. I'll take the same brown and I'll just mix it into here. So I have a little bit of a lighter version of that. I'm going to take this one and add some yellow ochre to it also. And then I also want to create some teals. That's a pretty color. This would be good in these areas over here with that one. And you want to kind of pull your paint together and then clump it like that, okay? So I'm going to take this paint off. I'm just using a tissue. And then this one, I want to add a little bit more yellow ochre to part of it. So I'm just going to take part of it and mix some yellow ochre into it. So one that's a little bit more warm with the yellow, and then one that's more warm with the red. And then I'm going to wipe this. And I haven't gotten any water. Again, these are water soluble, but I haven't used any water, just pure paint. So I put a little bit of blue and then a little bit of white to mix a baby blue. And you'll find that this is really standing out on my palette. So no matter what I've mixed on here, it's like that's my focal point. So I want to tone that down. So what I'll do is neutralize it. And to neutralize it, you need to mix the complement, which is orange. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of alizarin crimson, just a little bit, because we know that alizarin goes a long way. So I'm literally just tapping that. I don't know if it's even focusing, but it's just a little bit on there, okay? You can see a little bit. And then I'll take a little bit of yellow ochre and then mix that with it. It's just a little bit of both, okay? And you're going to see this kind of neutralize and tone down. Do you see that? Okay. So it's getting less saturated, kind of becoming a little bit more gray. Now, I did a little bit of both. I can always go in and add a little bit more. I think I'll do a tiny bit more. So I'm just going to scrape a little bit here, put it there, and I'll just scrape a little bit here and put it there. Okay, so just a little bit. Now we'll mix those together. So that's forming a little bit of an orange, which is neutralizing that ultramarine blue. That's beautiful. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. And I want something similar in a green, okay? So I'll just take this, get it off my palette, and I scrape it up and put it down, okay? And then I'm gonna clean my knife because I wanna get into green. Now, I don't have Viridian. That's not part of my color palette. So we will take the ultramarine blue and the yellow ochre and mix those together. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add some white to it. Okay, and then we'll mix and see what we get. There we go. That's what I wanted. So before I had a green that was a little too olive for me. I wanted something a little bit more towards the blue side because I didn't want to separate too far from what I did over here. Now go ahead and add white. And you'll notice I'm unifying color. Do you remember on this side when I added a little bit of alizarin and green to kind of neutralize and tone it down? Okay. I'm going to add a little bit of another color to this to kind of unify it to my entire painting. So just a tiny bit. Okay. I want to add a tiny bit of that and then I'll put it in here. Just to unify everything together. Perfect. Okay. So we have more of a neutral green, which is great. Now we're going to be using our palette knife to paint. So we're not going to be using a brush. All right. Here we go. I'm going to start with his face and I'm going to pick up colors that resemble what I see here. So it's kind of like a paint by numbers. I'm going to use more of the back side of my knife to get this down because his face is really small and I can kind of maneuver this easily. I'll start off with the skin first and then move on to the hair. So I'll pick up my lightest light first. So I've got this color here. We're going to go ahead and apply that in this area of his forehead. I'll also put some above the eyebrow ridge here. Okay. And this is a smaller space, so you want to be a little bit more meticulous with where you're putting things. Along the nose, underneath the eye. Then I'm going to go into a little bit more of my flesh tone here. And again, I'm just pulling and painting that down. He does have a little bit more olive color here, so I'm going to pick up on some of that green that I mixed at the bottom and put some of that in this area here. It's a little dark, so I'll just go ahead and take some white. The goal is to mix a little bit more on your palette. Still a little heavy, so I'll go back to this color. Kind of mix that all together. There we go. Okay. Mix more on your palette than you do on your canvas. Underneath the eye, there's a little bit more of that kind of green. And I think it really starts to pop when you get the darks and you get, the pink colors in the skin tone. And right now I'm just using that back side of the knife. You want it to look like that hair is coming from the skin. And so you'll end up softening that hairline as well. Make sure you go into the ear. Now the ear is a little bit more pink, so we're going to directly go into that pink. And in my drawing, I have enough structure here to see, my planes and the direction that I want to go. And my initial drawing was done in pencil. Take a little bit of brown into that ear. And then I'm going to go ahead and start getting some of the browns in there. So I have pinks and flesh tones on this knife. I'm going to wipe that off. And I'm in an area that's going to require a little bit more paint. So I'm actually going to take a lot of paint and put it down and move it. And you can scrape it and then put it down. The focus is not going to be the eyeball itself, because that's put into a darker plane. Focus is going to be eye socket. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab some pinks and just place it right on top. And this is when it gets a little tricky. It's trying to get these little areas with your knife. So that's why getting that paint on the tip of the knife is really helpful to kind of guide it and move it around. And once you get out of that focal area, you're able to move a little faster. You'll see how I'm changing the direction of how I hold this as well as I paint. And again, you're not necessarily trying to get an eyeball, but you are trying to get the idea that there is an eyeball in there. And then we'll go back and lighten some of these things up as well. You need a shadow mask, but nothing too heavy. So I created this kind of muddied color from a lot of other colors. And then I'll find other areas to put that. So I can put some of that down here. I just want to soften up some areas around the eye. I'm gonna take some white and get some areas focus in here. So you can see me working larger shapes now that I'm kind of out of that focal area. When it comes to the figure, I'll just kind of block in major shapes using the planes that I've kind of already established. He has more olive skin, so I'm just kind of focusing this pink area more towards areas where the blood will rush a little bit more. Elbows, you know, bottom of the pectoral, a little bit there. And then for this one, I'm actually going to focus in the shadows. So I'm going to mix a little bit more of a shadow mask here. We want some areas that have some smoothness in it, some roughness. So sometimes I'll even come back into the face and just kind of smooth out